if you had to choose one, which would you advise? Short or long-term rental?
Ah,
Hey guys, welcome back to the High Homes channel. Today we're on one of our expert talks with Camilla. Welcome on.
hello, how are you?
Camilla, I've been
Thank you.
so excited to talk about this topic, and I'm super happy that you joined us.
Thank you very much for having me today, and I'm more than happy to share all my personal experience with you.
Awesome. So for those of you that don't know Camilla, I've known Camilla my entire career, right? You're a real estate agent, just like us. You have personally invested in properties,
Yes,
both
correct.
long-term and short-term.
Yes.
And when we were thinking of who would be the best guest to talk about this, I thought of you.
Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to share my experience because it's very different if you look at the holiday rental market or the long-term rental market. I have several properties and I do both. So yeah, let's talk about it. What do you need to know?
So, in Spain, for people that don't know the difference, when we talk about a holiday rental property, we're talking about a property that's rented weekly on Airbnb, on the platforms, right?
Correct.
So you rent it as a holiday property. And then we've got long-term lets, which are normally, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, up to 5 years. So let's start by talking about the main differences that you see between the short-term holiday rental market and the long-term rental market based on your experience.
Right, so there is a big difference. First of all, I have to say that I bought these 2 apartments I have at the moment owning in Calahonda in 2 different communities purely as an investment. Okay, so what's important for me? On the bottom line are the numbers, the income I make with these properties based on the price I paid for them. And that's why I started to buy one property which I have fully renovated, and I did start to do short-term rental.
How many
on it.
years ago was this?
I bought this apartment 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. Okay, perfect.
So luckily the prices have been a little bit lower back then, so I was able to get a good deal. And then I thought, okay, I want to fully renovate it, make it a class similar, I think, to your apartment. And
So what did you do in terms of renovation? So
Everything.
Everything. So flooring,
Everything.
infrastructure, plumbing,
Floor,
electrics, everything.
Everything. It was a complete design change and a complete renovation and restoration. And I wanted to do that. When I bought this apartment, I bought it at a good price, and I really fancied to do this renovation project. Also for me as an experience to learn and play with design and stuff like that. And my initial idea when I bought it and I started the renovation was actually not doing such a big job and do long-term rental. But then we did a much bigger job, and it was so nice that I actually thought, let's try the holiday rental.
It happens to everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
you think like, I want to do this on the property, and then you get excited and you
Yeah.
want to do it, you end up doing a lot more.
Correct. And I finished the renovation, I think, by the end of April. And I thought, okay, summer is approaching. Let's put it on booking.com and Airbnb and see what happens over the summer. And then I can still decide if I want to change it to long-term.
So this is in 2022.
Yes.
Okay, so you put it on the rental market. What happens?
Well, it was pretty successful. I got a lot of bookings in the beginning. Maybe, in the beginning, when you put a property on one of these portals, I started a little bit less expensive or good prices because I wanted to get the bookings in and the reviews, which later on helps to get more bookings. So I got a lot of bookings, and people were really happy, and the summer went really well. And my apartment is in Upper Calahonda, so I usually have families with kids. They enjoy the pool and the area around there and use it as a base to explore. And it went really well. So I really can't complain about the holiday rentals.
And you manage it. You manage the bookings,
I
the
manage
rentals,
it.
and everything.
And I think obviously that makes a difference because I do everything from the cleaning, check-in, check-out,
Everything.
managing, booking, Airbnb, everything. Okay.
So that's one of the things we want to talk about in a bit, is the key differences between long-term and short-term. And management is a really big part of it, in
100%.
in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one. And then what about the other? Did you also put that into short-term rental immediately? Was that a bit later?
No, not at all. I bought
Okay.
the apartment in El Porton. I was lucky with that one. That was a good deal. I bought it about a bit more than a year later. So we completed it. I'm losing time. Time is flying. I think 2 years ago I completed
more or
it,
less,
or like 1.5 years ago. And then I thought, I wasn't really sure what to do in the beginning. And I thought, let's rent it for maybe 6 months and then do a full renovation job too. That was the initial idea.
So before putting it on the rental market, let's get some money in.
Yeah, exactly. Get some
Okay.
money. That was, I missed that. Get some money in.
Capitalize
and then,
yourself.
Exactly. And then do the renovation. So while I put it on the market to offer it for long-term rental, I got bombarded by hundreds of people desperately looking for a place to stay. Yeah. So there was this lovely lady. She said, please, 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 can I rent it for 1 year? We agreed on a good price, which made it worth for me doing it. And I decided to enter a 1 year rental contract.
So at that moment, right, when you sign that long-term rental contract, just to put it into perspective of the viewers, you have one property in short-term rent and one property in long-term rent.
Correct.
So it's a perfect example and it's a perfect topic for this video. So let's talk about now the key differences. You've signed up a long-term tenant and you have a property advertised short-term on the different platforms.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Let's start talking about the management of short-term versus long-term. What are the key differences?
Well, basically, there's no management for the long-term rental, and I really enjoy it. I have to say, it is smooth. I'm very lucky with my tenant. She's lovely. She pays on time, and I have nothing to do with it. So I am actually enjoying it a lot. Okay. Also, the holiday rental is quite a rewarding thing. Obviously, it involves a lot more management. Yeah. If you leave it to a management company as an owner, you don't have anything to do. But then obviously you have to also pay for the service.
It's a big chunk.
Which is a big chunk. And for me, it only makes sense to do it myself financially. And it's rewarding because I get great reviews. People love it. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's not only the general maintenance to the property and the check-in, the check-out, and doing all the platforms. It's also you have to get the bookings in to make sure there's no gaps and to play with the prices and, make sure also you have it rented in the winter. So there's more worries and there is definitely so much more work to it.
So as a sort of, comparison economically, financially, right? If you were to have a good year in the short term with a short-term property, right? And you were to, obviously long-term is quite stable, but what would be a good year income versus a normal income on long-term? What's the difference of income percentually? So, if you were to bring a property to El Portón and you were to put it on the short term versus long term, what are the differences financially?
Well, first of all, it depends on the condition of the apartment. Obviously, long-term rental, I can rent the property I bought in pretty basic condition, good condition, but not renovated. Now, if I want to do short-term rentals, obviously I need to invest a lot more money to make it ready for short-term rentals. Looking at the pure numbers of my 2 apartments, there is a difference. I make more on the bottom line with the holiday rentals, but it's not as big as you would think. But I also guess that depends on the location of the property. It's Upper Calahorra, it's obviously not beachside Elviria, where of course you would make a lot more doing holiday rentals than long-term rentals, yeah? So I'd say it's about 20% more with the short-term rentals.
So 20% more with the short-term rentals, you managing it.
Correct.
So like if I was Peter coming over from Norway and I wanted to buy a property in El Portón, automatically I'd say that the market standard for property management would be 25%, would you say? 25,
yeah,
30,
between
30%?
20 and 30%, yeah.
25 and 30%.
Correct.
So all of a sudden, that which is left over for you would be consumed by the property management company.
Correct. I mean,
So-
obviously, if you rent out your property long-term through an agent, which is probably recommended to have someone in between and manage it also, you usually pay 1 month's commission to the agent. So obviously, there are also management fees, but you usually only do that once.
That's a very good point. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you rent a property long term, you pay that 1 month to the agent.
Correct.
That's correct. And then when you rent a property short term, you have the 25-30% on the.
But long-term rental, you can do without an agent, where holiday rental, and you don't live in Spain, that's probably going to be very challenging.
Difficult.
Basically impossible, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about from the financial perspective, there's one thing that our audience might not know, and it's the financial or fiscal reward on long-term versus short-term.
Correct.
Where would you let's start?
That is very important, and indeed, a lot of people don't know that. So, on long-term rental, you only pay tax on 50% of the income. Whether on short-term rentals, you pay your income tax on 100% of the rental income, which makes a huge difference. Massive difference. So, if you take all this into account, plus the less work, in my case, I would have of not managing my holiday rental, it becomes more equal.
So I'm not sure how it works for non-residents, but in the case of residents, you get a 50% reduction on the rental income, but you can also, I don't know if you know this, you can also deduct interest of your mortgage.
I know, yes.
So like there's all these benefits to renting long-term. Now let's talk about the negatives of the long term. What would you say are, let's say, the biggest or the
Well,
worst side of long term rentals?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely much more risk to it, okay? And everyone needs to be aware of that. Now, you and me, we live here, we know the market, we know how it works, we know how to act in case we have a tenant who doesn't pay rent, because this is the biggest risk. First of all, if you decide to rent your property on a long-term base, you need to be aware of the tenants having the right to stay up to 5 years.
Up to 5 years. I
Up
mean,
to
that's
5
massive.
years.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
basically, you lock your property away for 5 years.
Correct. So does it work for someone who buys an investment they want to use regularly also? No. You need to be sure that you can say goodbye to your property for the next 5 years, which for me, perfect, I mean, I bought it as an investment. If you do short-term rentals, you have a contract, let's say for 2 weeks, they move in, they move out, they paid up front. The only risk you have is obviously that they ruin your place or that they destroy anything or something breaks. With a long-term rental, if someone moves in and decides not to pay the rent for whatever reason, you have a problem. It's not that you can get them out within a week. It's going to be work, it's going to be hustle, it's going to be lawyers, courts, and all this crap to get them out. Unfortunately, the protection of landlords here in Spain
It's not great.
is not great.
No, I agree.
And that's why a lot of people don't want to do long-term rental. For me, it works very well because I've got an amazing tenant and she pays on time and all is good. But if that's not the case, then a dream becomes a nightmare.
I totally agree. So we've been managing in the past a lot of long-term properties, and there's one thing which exists in Spain to, help owners. It's rental insurance. But rental insurance doesn't cover the entire way. So rental insurance is basically green lights your tenant.
Yeah,
Right, so-
exactly. That's what I thought.
And that's quite, it sounds great. And obviously if they stop paying their rent, well then obviously they'll pay you a certain amount, but it's not bulletproof.
Because that maybe makes them to, if they have financial problems, to actually not pay the rent because they have the insurance.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I never used it for any of the properties I manage in long term or for my own. I never did that.
So right now you still have one in long term and one in short term.
Yes.
What's your, let's say, forecast or your view for Cala Honda or Costa del Sol over the next 5-6 years? Are you thinking to take your property off the holiday rental or keep it in the holiday rental? What's your plans?
There's one thing that I see the market in general, and then there's my personal situation, okay?
Okay.
So I think in general, we have a lot of changes in laws at the moment, which makes it more complicated to rent out your property on a short-term base. There are a lot of details to it, and it probably we will see maybe less holiday rental apartments, which doesn't mean that we see more long-term rentals apartment, because I
Agreed.
don't think that the people who currently rent their properties are probably 90% expats who use it every now and then for themselves will suddenly say it's all too complicated, I'm going to turn and do long-term rental. That's not going to happen. If
Agreed.
this is the government, what they're trying to do with implementing all the laws to make it more complicated, I don't think that's going to work.
I mean,
First of all.
a perfect example we were talking about before we sat down here was a client of ours that has there are some communities which are limiting short-term rentals. And, as part of our, let's say, service of helping clients buy property along the coast, we get people sort of only searching for a property they can rent because they want to use it a few times a year. They want to rent it in summer, but then they want to use it, 3-4 times a year. That's the problem with long-term is the ones you rent it long-term, you can't use your property again.
Yeah.
So what we were talking about before we sat down is I have one client in their community, they're prohibited rentals. And you'd think, oh, well, that means that he'd put it for long-term rent. No, he's selling.
Yeah,
And that's...
and it's not easy to sell these.
No, exactly. So we are now seeing some developments where having a holiday limitation affects the resale price in some cases.
That is giving me a hard time, completely away from my own properties and how I see it. 90% of the clients I have, they want to buy something which they can use, but also make some profit in the summer and rent it, or which cover the cost. So we are only looking at properties which communities still allow it. The ones who have banned the rentals, they are not selling or they're dropping in price. And is it really clever? I don't know, because it won't give any immediate effect to the community, because once you have the rental license, you can continue to rent for the next 10 years.
Totally.
It will only make a difference for the people who buy there now. They won't get the rental license. Yeah. So it won't have an immediate effect. If all the communities ban rentals, then Calahorra turns into a ghost town again. So this is also not very clever.
I think also like what I always said on our channel is we don't live in Madrid or Barcelona. right? Like,
Exactly.
this is a very residential place, and it's increasingly residential given that in the last 2-3 years, even more and more people are moving over to Malaga or Marbella to live. But if you look at individual areas, and you know them just as well as I do, you look at Calahonda, you look at Riviera, you look at, I don't know, Alcalá de Mijas, these places are highly touristic.
Yeah, I mean,
So, like,
all the restaurants, all the bars,
Yeah.
if we don't have any tourists anymore, what's going to happen to all the businesses? So we have to keep the balance. And it's right to keep the balance between holiday rentals and long-term rentals. But it's not okay to make it so complicated for the holiday rentals to push people to do long-term, but not release the laws to make it easier for landlords or maybe investors. Because how many clients do you have who are saying, I want to invest in long-term rentals. What is the respected return of investment? I don't think you have many of these, but it would be good also to push these people to buy properties purely as an investment for long-term rental.
Totally agree. Totally agree. We're in the market, but there's people which are foreign to this market. They just see it from, as a purchaser or a consumer. I don't think people understand the depth of how big the short-term rental market is on the coast.
Yeah.
Like, from, let's say, Malaga through to Casares Costa, the market is so big.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much demand for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of properties, all different sort of shapes. I mean, there are houses in Marbella, in Puente Romano, in the Golden Mile, the rent in excess of 10,000 euro a day.
Yeah.
That exists.
And it's
you know?
tax income for the government. So
Yeah.
you cannot completely kill this business either. And I
100%.
doubt that all the people who would rent apartments would then go for a hotel, because this is exactly the type of holiday they want. Obviously, they can't kill all the holiday rentals. That would be very stupid. But, I mean, stay realistic, government, and don't make it too complicated. You know?
Totally. I mean, if you're a family of 4 and you want to come over, you rather be in a place of you can enjoy with the kids, small apartment, a small house with your own pool or whatever. No?
Yeah. But on the other hand, I have to say, for my personal decision, which has nothing to do with the market, I lean towards putting my other apartment also to long term. Why? Because the property prices are going up, which means the rents are going up. There is, and this is bad to say for everyone who's looking for a property, but from an investor's perspective, exactly, we get good rent and we can make a good return on long-term rental too. And it means less work, less tax to pay, and nearly the same return of investment than with the short-term
I think it's a win-win, because also you're bringing more product to the market. As we know, like in Spain in general, but all over Europe, there's not enough property to satisfy the demand. So, like, I think any person that's bringing property to the market is welcome. No?
Yeah.
Like, that's the way I would see
exactly,
it,
100%. But also, you see these posts on Facebook when people offer long-term rentals and then they get completely shitstormed by, oh my God, this is too expensive, this is ridiculous. But people also have to understand, if you want to rent out your property, which you will not be able to use in the next 5 years, you want a certain amount of yield, which is probably minimum 4% per year you want.
Agreed.
Other than that, it doesn't make sense at all.
Agreed. But the thing is, what happens in the rental market, and I think this is true to the rental market, to the sale market, you get a lot of vendors or owners that sort of, make up a price. Like, and I think and I think that, people look at the bad part of stuff. Like, I've seen people that get a property and put it on the market $2,500 a month, and you go like, that's not worth that. But they're just trying to see if they're cheeky.
Yeah, but as long as someone pays it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's dangerous too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of owners which are trying to be cheeky.
Yeah.
But that's the number people look at, right? Like, oh, that property on the market in this place for $2,500, when in reality they rent for 1,500.
Yeah.
Quickfire. We ask all our guests.
Okay.
We call it quickfire because we sort of throw different options at you, and you need to choose one or the other.
Okay, interesting.
And it's going to basically show our viewers, our audience, tell them a bit more about yourself.
Okay. Good.
So I think Luna sent them to me right over here. So
exciting.
I have not read these before.
Not prepared.
So quickfire. I'm going to throw some options at you, and you need to choose which one is for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mijas Costa o Marbella?
Mijas Costa.
Espetos o jamón ibérico?
Espetos.
Churros or pretzels?
Pretzels.
German. I like this one. Beachside penthouse duplex with sea views or a 5-bed villa with mountain views?
5-bed villa with mountain views.
Oh, okay. Tortilla de patatas or schnitzel?
Schnitzel. Hello. I had schnitzel yesterday. I have it every day.
TikTok or Instagram?
Instagram.
Renovation project or ready to move in?
Renovation project.
Gazpacho versus almorejo?
Gazpacho.
Okay. So, last but not least, if you had to choose one, which would you advise? Short or long-term rental?
Long-term rental.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's been
Thank you.
absolutely awesome to have
Thank
you
you
on.
to have me on the show. Great.
Awesome. So guys, as a wrap, I will just mention this. Don't forget to comment any questions you guys have for us, for Camilla, and we're going to be answering you on our video. Also, don't forget to like this video if you like the contents of it. And for those of you which are not subscribed to the channel, press the button. Hasta luego.
Ciao.